Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Fronteras, A Changing America. I'm Monica Ortiz Uribe. Tens of thousands of immigrant children from Central America have crossed into the United States in recent months. Their numbers have been so great, it's overwhelmed the U.S. Border Patrol. So the federal government has reached out to local communities in places like El Paso and Las Cruces to ask for help. Today, we're going to talk about one of those community efforts. We'll also talk about the detention facility in Artesia, where hundreds of immigrant families are being held. My guests today are Chancellor David McNeil Jr. and Bishop Oscar Cantú from the Las Cruces Diocese. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
So tell me, the Las Cruces Diocese helped shelter some of these migrant families. How did that come to be?
Well, it was over a month ago I got a phone call from Bishop Seitz. He's the Catholic Bishop of El Paso, and he told me that he had gone over to Annunciation House, which is in his diocese, and has for decades now been sheltering immigrant children who come in unaccompanied to the U.S. And there were a couple of ICE agents that were present there, and this crisis had already begun.
This was around when?
This would have been just over a month ago, and so in any case, the ICE agents asked him to reach out to neighboring border dioceses to see if we could help to shelter some of these families who are being released on their own recognizance, and it's somewhat of a halfway house to give them shelter, humanitarian aid, while they make arrangements to get to their family, because all of these families have family members in the United States.
In other places.
In other places. So we help them make arrangements for travel, bus reservations or plane reservations, to get to Boston, to get to Chicago, to get to Los Angeles, to Dallas, to Houston, wherever their family is. And so they normally stay with us for about 24 hours, so not much time.
Now, most of these migrant families are crossing not anywhere near here,
right,
out in South Texas, around the McAllen area.
Mm-hmm.
How is it that they ended up so far west in our region?
Sure. Well, it's they are picked up by Border Patrol and Customs, and they're processed through that agency and then handed over to ICE. ICE does their processing as well, and then they fly them to the refugees to El Paso or wherever they have a shelter. And so that's what they've been doing for the last month.
So they've been running out of room in places in South Texas that serve as the intermediary.
Right.
Okay. And so what was your response, and how did you begin to prepare? How much time did you have to prepare?
Well, I asked that question when we had our original meeting with Ruben Garcia, who was the director of Annunciation House in El Paso, and also with some of the ICE agents, just to get a sense of the landscape, what we're talking about, how much time, and what services the families need. And so I asked the question. I said, well, how soon do you need us to be operational? And they said, how about tonight?
Tonight, wow. This was at what time of day?
Well, it was probably noon when we were meeting, but obviously it took us a few days to get things ready, because we had to hire a director of the program, and then send out information to request volunteers, to request supplies, etc. So it took a few days, but we were able to get up and operational pretty quick.
Has the diocese ever done anything like this before?
No.
And, yeah, so
No.
this was
Our
something
first shot.
completely new to us.
You had to start from scratch, basically.
That's right.
We did,
Okay.
and Lonnie Briseño has a background in social work,
And who is this?
he is the person that we hired to be the project manager for Project Oak Tree was the name that we gave it, and he's done a fantastic job, and some very capable lead volunteers who help us to organize the rest of the crews and the teams.
So give me a sense of how many people it took to put this together. Did you have volunteers? Did you have, how was it staffed?
Mm-hmm. So David, you might want to
It
talk
was
about that.
staffed, and with the exception of Lonnie, it was staffed entirely by volunteers. We received no funds except contributions from people who wanted to help. We requested a number of things. One thing we needed, of course, was cots because people would be staying overnight. And so the Doñana County Emergency Services provided us with cots to put into the facility. Then we had volunteers to do cooking, volunteer medical personnel to do medical examinations, volunteers to help accept, sort, and hand out clothing. And we had volunteers to do, when the refugees first came in, we needed to record information about them so that we could contact their families. We had people doing that. And then the last area that we had volunteers for was people that arranged travel plans with the families.
And so how many volunteers are we talking about? That sounds like a lot.
We had over 200 volunteers within a few days, and since then I think the number's up to almost 500 people willing to help.
Wow, and where did these volunteers come from at such short notice?
From the community of Las Cruces. They have been overwhelmingly generous.
Wow.
Yeah, many from various parishes across the city, and others who are not Catholic. Some from the Jewish community, some Protestant communities, or no particular religion at all. We did do some screening some necessary screening for volunteers. Especially,
what kind of screening?
We gave them, we asked them that we would do a background check, a criminal background check, as well as we have in the diocese a safe environment program for our volunteers and any person who has regular contact with young people, with minors. So we did kind of an abbreviated version of that for these volunteers as well.
Okay, and give me a sense of the migrant families that you sheltered. How many and over what period of time?
Within a little less than a month, we had about 200 people and roughly 80 families. So we would have all of the family heads were women. We didn't have any male heads. So we'd have a mother or an aunt who was anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4. I remember one lady had 5 kids with her, aged 4 to 14. And they would, once the ICE transportation brought them up to Las Cruces.
How did they get here?
They were flown in, as Bishop said, to El Paso, and then they were bused from the detention center in El Paso up to Las Cruces. Our facility was at Finley Hall at the Immaculate Heart of Mary Cathedral. And when they would get off the buses, I was struck by two things about these folks. The ladies were all overwhelmingly either confused or scared, or both. And the kids were so tired, they were just dragging. They had been through a great deal. So we would bring them in, get personal information, contact for family here in the United States. We would get the names of the kids and where they were from and so on. And then we would start moving them through the process. And depending on how many came in, we only had like 4 tables for people to do the transportation, which is what they really wanted to do. So we would get some in there, others we would feed, and we would provide them showers. And that was the beginning of the transformation. When they came out of those showers and they felt clean, they now started to feel human again. We had one lady that told us that she hadn't had a shower or a bath in 28 days. So it gives you sort of an idea of what they went through. And so then we would give them new clothing, all of which was contributed by the people in the community. And then we would start processing them for travel.
I see.
So,
and when you say processing, what would you do?
well, the typical way to do that was we would have them come in and sit down with one of our people who was arranging travel. They all came with a phone number of a relative here in the United States, and so they would give us that phone number. We would call that family and then hand the phone over to the refugee and say, talk to your family, let them know it's really you. Then we would talk to the family again and say, we need help with the payment for the transportation. And we had buses, trains, and plane transportation available.
Tell me, who needed help with the transportation?
Well, the families paid for the transportation of the refugees.
The families in the interior of the U.S.
Right.
Okay.
Some of them that we would help a little bit, but we didn't have a lot of money to do all the transportation, so we would ask those families to do it. Many of them whipped out a credit card and said, here's the number, get the tickets, and we were ready. Some took a little bit longer time to get the financial arrangements made. And then, once we had the money available, we would make the reservations, and depending on how fast we could get the reservations, then the people would be placed in transportation, again, volunteers that would drive them to the bus station, train station, or the airport.
Well, just to be clear, the diocese had nothing to do with the authoritative part of the process in terms
That's
of.
correct.
These immigrants have already been in Border Patrol and Immigration.
They had
Customs Enforcement.
travel documentation,
Right.
and they were given a date to appear before a judge. And once they got to their destination city, they were required, I think, within a couple of weeks to check in with a probation officer.
Okay.
So
each had a court date in order to
That's right.
Right.
to make.
Or
their
they
case
would be given
before.
one on arrival, but they were each given a letter with their photograph that allowed them to travel in the United States. And for some of them, that was their only identification. Others brought identification up with them from their country, birth certificate, baptism certificate, whatever they had.
Okay. And it sounds like both of you had a chance to interact and speak with some of the families. What were some of the stories that you heard? What was some of the things that struck you about where they came from and why they were here?
Well, yeah, I was a little careful to probe too much with them. We wanted them to feel comfortable, so we didn't want to interrogate them in a way that was not necessary. But I did try to engage them and certainly to make them feel comfortable. And they were certainly all from Central America, from Honduras, Salvador, and Guatemala, and they often talked about the long journey and how difficult it was. You could see it in their expressions and their faces. One grandmother who came, and she was separated from her grandchild, who was, I forget, 2 or 3 years old, and I didn't quite grasp the reason why they were separated.
Separated on the journey between.
No, they were separated once they were apprehended on this side of the border.
I see.
So she was concerned about what was going to happen with that child.
How old?
And it very young, younger than 5 years old. And I think the issue was they couldn't determine that she was a legal guardian for that, since she was a grandmother.
I see.
So she was terribly worried about where that child was and who was going to take care of her. So.
And I wonder, I mean, things like this, it doesn't seem, I wonder if they were probably looking to anything and anyone for assistance for something like that, or any number of other things. And I wonder how much you were able to help with things like this that came up, that concerns that they had.
Sure. And it was amazing to hear simply thank yous from these mothers. And even the children, thank you for taking us in. We feel comfortable, that they had had a nice meal. They said while they were detained by the federal agents, all they had were bologna sandwiches for 2 weeks straight. And bologna sandwich is nice every now and then, but to have it, 2 or 3 times a day, every day. So we were able to give them some TLC, some nice. Rice and beans and a hot meal, and So
How long did they stay with you? Approximately?
yeah, basically average of about 24 hours. So because their goal was to get to their family. So as soon as they could sit down with our travel agents, we call them, and were able to get a bus ticket or a plane ticket, they were out of here.
And so I understand there's been a lot of concern with any kind of illnesses, especially contagious illnesses, that these migrants might have and bring into the United States. I don't know if that's anything that you had any experience with.
I did. We had volunteers from the medical field, residents at Memorial Medical Center, the doctor that was leading them, and then various volunteer doctors. Every time we had a group come in, we had physicians, assistants, and nurses on site. And the only illness they found was a head cold.
Okay.
And several of those, and a little bit of upper respiratory problems because of the dampness of where they had been. But there were no serious illnesses. We had one child who was dehydrated. He was hospitalized for about 6 hours so they could rehydrate him. And that was it. There were no serious illnesses whatsoever.
Okay. And so, so what happened, so you said there was about 200 in a month, correct?
Right, in different groups. They didn't all come at once.
And they would all arrive at different times of the day. Give me a sense of
Pretty much it was around 1 or 2 in the afternoon. We did get 2 smaller groups that came in the evening. We got 2 hours notice they were coming. But the rest of them we would get almost a day's notice that there would be some people coming.
Okay.
We never knew exactly how many, but we were able to get the volunteers there and take care of them.
Okay. And where would you house them?
They were housed at Finley Hall, which is the parish hall for the Immaculate Heart of Mary Cathedral. It has a large room where we could put the cots and the dining area, and then it had rooms down another hall where we could do the clothing distribution, the medical, and the travel.
I see.
Yeah, it's basically the size of a gymnasium. So we had the cots out, and then we had a separated area for a dining room. So we had a separate kitchen, and we had volunteers who prepared the meals, and were able to offer 3 hot meals throughout the day. And then down the hallway, as David mentioned, we had one room dedicated for the clinic. So our medical volunteers were able to visit with anyone who had medical concerns. The next room was a clothing room, so they were able to go in and find a change of clothing and shoes, and because all they had was what they were wearing on their back.
Right.
And so they spent some time shopping in our free clothing room, and then the next room was our travel agency, and so they would go in there and make arrangements to travel.
Okay.
We had one other room across the hall where toiletries and necessities were there, so that we could give them both something then and something to take with them on the trip. And we had a very large box of stuffed toys. Every child got a toy of their own. So the offering of stuff was overwhelming. We were eventually able to give every family 3 sets of clothing before they left. So.
And they weren't coming with little else before
They came with a plastic bag that had some things and an apple, maybe.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was.
Wow. And give me a sense, I wonder also, after that long journey, we spoke like maybe physical illness, but I wonder their emotional states, and if you noticed any signs of needing attention, if they're needing attention with respect to that.
We didn't have them with us long enough to be able to provide that service, but we did have 4 psychologists who had offered their services if they were needed. But mostly, when they weren't working with the travel folks, the moms were sleeping. We had volunteers come in to play with the children and take that load off of them, because I would say the overwhelming thing that concerned them was exhaustion and the relief now that they were among people who could be friendly. So we made it a big point to make them feel welcome, let them rest when they needed it, and then get on the road, because that's really what they were after.
And so this Project Oak Tree has come to an end now. You don't have any more migrant traffic, as I understand.
We think so. My feeling is that we need to make sure that that's true before we fold everything up and send it away. But we were told last week we would get no new folks in because the flights have stopped. And we think that's probably going to happen this week, and if that's the case, then we feel it's pretty well over.
Okay. So you recently visited the detention facility in Artesia as well. Tell me why you visited and how you gained access.
Well, we wanted to visit the facility because it's in my diocese, and so I feel some responsibility for what happens there, particularly since the majority of these families are also Catholic and Christian, and so I'm concerned about not just their physical and legal care, but their spiritual care as well, particularly if they're going to be there for a while. And so I wanted to go to because I had not received any official information from the federal agency, since they had asked us to open up the shelter in Las Cruces, and we did so to help the agency. I called them up and I said, look, we need some information. We're cooperating with you. We need some cooperation on our part. So and they were very good. They said, well, we're happy to give you a doors open tour, and which they did, and so that we could meet the director of the facility there in Artesia and see how the program is run. And I had particularly three concerns. One was our ability to do some pastoral care for the families that are there, to be able to have access to them with the local pastor and some of his team. And then secondly, the access of our legal team from Catholic Charities that reaches out pro bono to these immigrant families, and to let them know what their rights are, and to also help to organize a team of pro bono immigration lawyers who could help to represent some of these families, and then thirdly, to know whether we could expect that some of the families would be released, and if so, whether we needed to set up something similar in Artesia. So that was the intent of the visit.
What did you see?
Yeah. Well, it was. I have to say, it was a bit depressing. It was. They were basically barracks, very clean. I mean, in a sense, they're well taken care of. They're getting nutritional meals, but it's absolutely not an adequate place for children.
Why not?
There is no green space. There is, you walk outside out of these barracks that are air conditioned, and it's blazing hot. You're walking on asphalt. You're walking on rocks. There's no green space, no place hardly to play. I think I saw 3 balls out in the yard, and it didn't look very welcoming. And they had to walk probably 200 or 300 yards to get to the dining room. And as we visited the dining room, and it was full when we visited, I did not see a single smile.
I see.
Not a single smile. We saw smiles on every family that came to us at the cathedral after they had had a shower, after they had had a hot meal, and they were able to say thank you. I saw desperation, despair, and sadness in the faces of these people.
Will you be going back? Do you know if you would be able, and if you'd be able to, and if you have plans to?
I haven't made specific plans to, but I do plan to be in touch with the agency, and the local pastor in Artesia has already gotten permission to enter, and he'll be going once a week to offer Mass and confessions and counseling with a team of his lay people from the parish. The agency, the Homeland Security, has also contracted with the Jesuit Relief Services. So there's a Jesuit priest who will be working full time with the agency there.
Well, I'd like to hear your thoughts about how you think that the federal government is handling this situation at the border and the subject of immigration in general, just to wrap up.
Sure. Well, with regard to staying in Artesia for a moment, I think both David and I, Dave's a lawyer by trade, and we're both very concerned about the access that these families have or don't have to pro bono lawyers to represent them. And as we understand, their court appearance will be by teleconference there in Artesia as a way to expedite the process. And we're terribly concerned about that they are not getting due process.
Very good, very good. Any final thoughts?
I would echo Bishop's concerns. I'm very concerned about the due process issue, very concerned about those that do have attorneys and whether the attorneys are getting notices of the hearing so they can be there. That does not appear to be happening. So I think that's something we need to press forward on and ensure that their rights under our way of life and Constitution are fully protected.
Very good. Well, I'd like to thank the two of you for coming on to the show. This has been Fronteras, A Change in America. I'm Monica Ortiz Uribe.